So this is Coach Aaron Saft and the Running His Life podcast. And we have just finished up what is now named Saft's Trail. So I wanted to kind of go through what was involved in the building of said trail. How it began, where it came from, and just go through and talk about what's the process in building a trail. Because this took an army to do, which I first want to just give thanks to Rugby Middle School for allowing me to kind of form and build this trail. I want to thank the Carolina Mountain Club for their um, their unwavering support. They did so much. There was so much manpower. So many volunteers helped to build this trail. I'd like to thank all the kids and parents that came out and helped build the trail, and just my family for allowing me to go out for countless hours and work on this trail. It's pretty much done by all means. There's like a little bit touches here and there. Of course, it's never ending when you build a trail because you have to maintain it. I'm going to talk about just the kind of beginning to end what we did and just go through if you are interested in kind of building a trail, the process for that. And I will stress that this is for building a trail on private land. Of course, the Forest Service it does not condone allow for us to just build trails without a lot that goes into building a trail on Forest Service land. Now, if you have an idea for a trail on Forest Service land, be it national forest or state property, bring it to the rangers, bring it to the ranger district and tell them your idea and kind of be a part of the process, because there is a huge process when it comes to building trails in our national forest. And I tried to have a ranger on to discuss that process, because there's all sorts of studies that have to be done prior to building upon um, a trail. We have to look at the flora and fauna and decide if there's anything that needs to be worked around, or not disturbed, or if it's even feasible to build upon that land based on what's there. There has to be an archaeological study to determine if there's any type of structures or buildings or remnants on the land that that need to be preserved and worked around, or not not be disturbed. So there's just a lot that goes into that. Whereas on private land, obviously we have a bit more lax conditions. So I did start with permission. As I said earlier, I want to thank Rugby for allowing me to do this. I went to Dr. McDarris, who's the principal, and I told him about my idea and said, do I have permission to build this? And he was amicable, very, very, very kind, very understanding. Allowed us even to go out there when school started. We had to check in, let him know who was on the property and what we were up to. I always, gave him about a week's heads up to say, hey, next Thursday we're going to be out there. We'll sign in. Here's where we'll be. Do we have your permission? And making sure that I stayed in contact with where we were with the trail, how close we were to completion, what needed to be done, and any kind of safety issues that came up. So, but yeah, again, obtaining permission is first and foremost. And then understanding the property boundaries. At Rugby, I asked for a property map, but that never came to fruition, which is fine. I brought up the Onyx Backcountry app. They had a special because it's a pretty expensive app. I believe it's like $99 for a year subscription. But they had a special for like $30 for the year. So I bought the Onyx Backcountry, and I'll put that in the show notes because it's a fantastic app for runners, because you'll know where you are if you're on public land or if you're on private property, if you're infringing upon something else. And in this case, I wanted to make sure that we stayed within the property of Rugby, that we weren't disturbing any other neighboring properties because private property basically surrounds the rugby property. So I use the Onyx, and which what that does is it shows you the actual tax boundaries, the lines that that are the property. So um, that was fantastic. I love that app. It was super helpful in understanding the property boundary, especially when we reworked the trail, which we'll kind of talk about that in just a few bullet points here. But first and foremost, you have to have a vision for the trail. And my vision was, once I saw how much property that rugby actually had, I was like amazed because I had built a trail like 2 years ago, and it was extending into a network that already existed and using a piece of the property that hadn't been used previously. So it lengthened another trail, which allowed us to create a new course for the cross country team. So my vision in that was being able to create a new cross country course using this new trail so that we could be on the trail for a longer period of time. And then the trail that I just built, which we called Saft's Trail, was uh, basically the whole back of the property. And what if you were to look at the property and if you were looking at the school, behind the school is all of the woods. And there's, if you will, kind of three distinct networks in the woods that are not really easily connected. You certainly can't make a loop out of using the three different networks. They're kind of all individual. There were connections, one connection by bridge, but again, those would be pinch points for a course because if you were to go use them, you'd have to go across a bridge in both directions, which, for running, obviously, especially for middle school and high school runners, you don't want two-way traffic on a bridge. That's a recipe for disaster because the bridges are about 3 feet wide. So not very wide, not wide enough for two people really to get by each other. So one would have to wait, which we don't want to do. So, my vision for Saft's Trail was to create a massive loop and that would connect all three independent networks together so that there were trails that could access Saft's Trail and you could run into any which one of those three networks from Saft's Trail or connect the furthest two networks together, which is what we're doing for the Truly Tough Cross Country Classic. We're going to use all three of those networks, but we're going to use Saft's Trail to get all the way to the far one and then come back into the middle one. The course is actually on Ultra Sign Up. So we are doing the 5K on September 28th and using Saft's Trail, which I'm super excited for. And it's so that was all in the vision of this trail. It had purpose, I had intent, and I can also expand upon it at a later time, which is super cool. And something I suggest is how can it be expanded upon or improved upon at a later time? So I have a larger vision, right? This is a piece of the puzzle. So it's not all trails have to be done at one time. As I said, I created one trail we call Survivor. I created that 2 years ago, and then the kids actually wanted to make a trail, and it had really good intent. It came off of one of the networks, we'll call them, and connected two trails and made a loop, which made extreme sense because previously we had to go outside onto basically the power lines to connect the two, which isn't ideal. I don't like the kids running by the towers and such. So this trail made extreme sense. It kept us within the property boundary. So it matched everything that we were trying to do. So we built that one this past summer. And then we had another section that had extreme root exposure. So a lot of erosion upon the trail. So in order for that to recover, we built a trail that would work around that. And in that process, kind of what I was talking about earlier, we found that there were lady slippers, and lady slippers are endangered. So we had to make sure that the route did not, come across that bed of lady slippers, which, that was super important. So we marked the trail, made sure that nothing was going to disturb the lady slippers because they are very fragile, and built the trail so that it worked around that. And then the last piece of the vision of the trail is what will it require to build it. Now, Saft's trail was a tremendous undertaking. It's in length, it's about 3/4 of a mile, which when we say that, it doesn't sound like much, but when you get into the labor of that trail, and understanding what went into it, and we're going to talk about all that momentarily, uh, you know, um, there was a lot that went into this because of the side hill. So the incline that the trail followed on the side of a hill was steep. So we had to cut into the hillside to make it flatter. So there was a lot of digging that had to be done. There was bridges that had to be built. Roots, trees that had to be removed. And again, we're going to talk about all this, but understanding that up front so that you have kind of a timeline. Now, we started looking at this, I think back in like March, my friend Victor and I. And that's kind of the next piece of this is determining the route. So in determining the route, again, you have to look at your vision. What is the vision here? How are you trying to make this come to fruition? What makes sense? What's the easiest path? What's the path of least resistance? What's already established? Is there animal trails? Is there user trails? So in other words, people come and walk on this property a lot. They come from the private property, again, which boundaries upon the rugby property, and they walk their animals in. So there's some user trails that were already there. There were some game trails that we could use that didn't require too much digging because they had already kind of flattened it out on the hillside. So trying to incorporate those things to make less work for ourselves made sense. But the conundrum became connecting one side to the other because of how much rhododendron and azalea there was. There was just so much mountain laurel, azalea, rhododendron. It was so thick, so it was very hard to find a path of connection. So what we did was we used all trails and recorded our progress from one side, and then we go to the other side and record our progress of the proposed route of where we were trying to go so that we kept getting closer and closer to those two dots. So the dots kept moving closer and closer together, and we were trying to find the best route to make that connection. And once we did, we had to refine it. And there's a few things that go into this. But when we started this route, we were like, wow, like part of the problem was there were a number of kind of creeks that ran down, down the hillside. If you picture this trail, basically it's a massive hillside that goes up to a ridge. And so the water would run off and start to form creeks. And we had a number of creek crossings that we had to be conscious of. So, how do we get around those wet areas? How do we get over those? What's the path of least resistance and easiest to build bridges across or cross? So we had to find ways across that wouldn't require too much extra work or wouldn't endanger the kids in any way. So that was a difficult task in and of itself because the creeks themselves could go pretty deep, and pretty wide. So we had to find points at which it was easy to get down to because there was a number of steep pitches that went down to the waters. And so we had to find routes that didn't require too much extra work in order to get down to them. That, in other words, it wasn't too steep. We wanted gradual grades so that, we could build sustainable trails so that if it did rain, the water wouldn't be pouring down the trail and creating more erosion. So lots of things to consider so far as, the water crossings. There was also the steepness of the hillside. the steeper the hill, the more you had to cut into it. So we tried to find grades that if we were running uphill or downhill, that were sustainable and create the trail at an angle or a pitch that wasn't too steep, so that water runoff didn't come off. It wasn't too deep, too tough to run up. We didn't have to create too many switchbacks because the steeper the hill, the more switchbacks you have to create. So we tried to find areas of hills that were sustainable, that were runnable or at least hikeable, as well as not creating too much erosion, like I talked about, and water runoff. And then we had to think about trees. If there's massive trees in the way, you're not going to cut those down. So, you have to find ways around trees, or are they removable? Rocks, there's a lot of rock outcroppings on this course, and we had to work our way around some of those, which, creates a little bit more distance on the trail, which is nice, but it also creates more work to create that work around. And then, such things as those rocks, and you want to make sure that you include some of the natural features so that, the kids can run past some really pretty things and see some pretty awesome sights. So how do you include those natural features? We'll also look for signs of wildlife where, we were hopefully not going to disturb anything that was living in the area. So, being cognizant of what animals are in the area and where they live, and not disturbing that. And then looking around to determine what resources are available on your proposed route. Are there some hardwood trees that you can use for, things like steps or water bars, or, water diversions, or rocks? We use rocks for some of the, like one of the creek crossings. We used it to kind of fill in trails where, we thought that the wetness would be a little too much. So, we created footing with rocks and breaking up rocks, which we'll talk about later. So what resources are available in the area for you to use later, and marking those so you know where they are so that you can use those in the process. So, in creating that route, we finally got the dots to connect. And then we were like, okay, here's our proposed route. And using that, we flagged it. We went through and we placed some survey flags. We put ribbons on trees so that we had a line to follow. So we got that all recorded. We made one single track to kind of say, okay, here's the proposed route. Again, flagged it so that we could have a visual when we went out there. Then we walked through with the Backcountry onX app and made sure that we weren't infringing upon any other properties, right? We wanted to keep it all within the rugby boundary. So we double checked that. So once that was done, we then said we brought in the Carolina Mountain Club at that point and said, hey, we've got this project. It's going to need some help. I knew I needed help in order to complete this, for having the meet in late September. And so I reached out to Carolina Mountain Club and asked them to come help me build this trail, and also to give me kind of a, um, a double check, if you will. I wanted them to kind of go through it and made sure it made sense, because we saw it one way, but they may see it another. And that was fantastic because they did have a number of good suggestions, and how to save some time, as well as how to make it more sustainable. So, in regards to saving time, they did we had already cut out a piece of trail, and they said, hey, did you think about going this way? And we hadn't, obviously. But what it did was it made less water crossings, and the water crossings that we had to cross in their proposed route, it also made for shorter bridges. So we didn't have to create as many bridges, and we also um, we didn't have to make the bridges as long, which was nice. So, that was one instance. Another instance was that, hey, you kind of made this turn really sharp. They're coming off a downhill. That's going to be a really hard turn to make. Why don't you make it a little bit longer? Because you have you have the real estate to do it, right? You have the property to do it. So, thinking about the runners and how they're going to use the trail was awesome. Kind of opened my eyes to a few new ideas, and we added on a little bit more. Again, a little bit more work, but it's going to be more enjoyable for the runners. So we're thinking about the users and how they're using it. So, having that extra set of eyes and other suggestions and opinions, it reformed the trail a little bit. It's, in multiple spots because, they were like, well, this grade may be a little bit steep. What have you thought about going this way? And again, we added on trail, but we made it more sustainable and more enjoyable in our perspective. So having that really, really helped. I enjoyed having that extra set of eyes. Then we decided, okay, we're gonna break up this trail into phases of constructions and sections that were going to be completed. So we said, okay, we're gonna work on this section first, right? And we didn't even think about the back section or any of the latter sections until we got through that first section, right? So what we did was we said, okay, this is how far we want to get in the first section. And we're going to work on this section until it's complete, and then we're going to move on to the next section. So we made it into smaller pieces to work on and complete, which, at some points there was, just a little bit to finish on, let's say, section one. So we had other people starting on section two and building on section two, working on section two and getting that going. So, it's not to say that you can't work on two sections at once, but we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. So we worked in sections and finished those. It was great to see completion of a section and then the progress being made on another section. And that was it made it more attainable. And like the process worked a lot faster because we had more manpower working on a smaller section. So we got things done a lot faster because we weren't spread out across the whole trail. We worked in sections, which I loved. All the while, we're keeping safety at the forefront. And that's something that the Carolina Mountain Club did a great job about, is we would have a briefing at the beginning and saying, okay, we've got, X amount of med kits present. We want to make sure we're being cognizant. Here's the work we're doing. So in being cognizant, we want to make sure if anybody's swinging, we're staying away from those people. If somebody's sawing, we're well away from the sawing, or the potential for a falling tree. So, being cognizant of the work that was being done and who's doing it, and how far should we be away from one another, as well as wearing safety equipment. That we all wore gloves, safety glasses, ear protection if we were running a chainsaw, chaps, etc. Using all the safety equipment to make sure that we stayed safe, hard hats, etc. The CMC did a great job at this, so we always put safety at the forefront. Never worked alone, especially with like chainsaws and such. We didn't want anybody working alone. We always want to be working with somebody. So that's huge. Um, so, to begin the trail itself, what we did was we went in, and Victor and we kind of started the process, in cutting trees. We started cutting through, cutting our way, especially through that laurel and, azalea and rhododendron. We began cutting through. Now, um, Victor and I have both been through the Sawyer permitting process. We've both had experience with cutting down trees, and making sure that we're safe and understand how to use a chainsaw. So, if this isn't something that you have experience with, either A, find somebody that does have experience. You should always cut with somebody, or go after your Sawyer's permit and learn how to use a chainsaw, or take a course in chainsaw use. That's super handy, especially if you're going to build trails. If you have that experience from, the course, then you can practice out, when you're building the trails, which is wonderful. To know what you're doing ahead of time and understand what's going on. It's definitely safer. Chainsaws can be very dangerous. So again, always work with somebody when you're sawing. Never be alone when you're sawing. Too much can go wrong. So what we did in this process, and this is something that we learned from the CMC, is that you cut the tree 3 to 4 feet from its base. And so you're leaving a high stump. And what that does is it gives you a lever to work with, and it's easier to remove the stump. by having that, that leverage. So you can work the stump, you can cut out the roots, and finally get the root bulb out. It was really great. And then the bigger stumps, the CMC used a winch. They had a really cool winch device. Now that's not accessible to everyone, but it is a great device. So if you're serious about building a trail, looking into this winch, it was amazing. The tool is really cool. It actually pulls the chain in both directions. So when you move the lever, there's a lever device that kind of moves the chain, if you will. It kind of ratchets. It ratchets in both directions. So if you push the lever or pull the lever, it's pulling the root back to you, which is really neat because typically a ratchet only works in one direction. This winch device had the lever worked in both directions. So pretty cool. That was super helpful in removing the larger stumps. Lots of work. And it also, the big thing too is, how are you going to discard all of the rubbish? So all of this stuff, because obviously, it can create easy forest fire if you have too much rubbish or too many rubbish piles. So what's going to go on with all the rubbish, and how are you going to remove that? You should have a plan for that as well. So that's, cutting down the trees. That was kind of first and foremost, so that we could get in there and kind of do work on the tread itself, actually making the trail itself. That was step one. Step two was the tread work. We use basic tools. The most basic was the hazel hoe. It's a flat bladed hoe. It's about maybe, I don't know, 6 inches wide. You can cut roots with it, pull out rocks with it. You can cut into the hillside, and basically kind of create the tread itself, create where your foot's going to land. Now, what we wanted to do was kind of give it a downward slope towards the outside of the trail so that the water would run off it and down the hill and not stay on the trail. So, when we did this tread work, it would take hours in order to get, a few hundred feet, depending on how many people we had working on the tread. But know that, like, for Saft Trail, for 3/4 of a mile, we worked basically from May until we just finished it here in August, on the tread. Like, each time we went out there, people were working on trees, working on stumps, and working on tread. It's such a process. We use mattocks to help remove some of the roots and some of the stumps. And a mattock, basically, it's got kind of an axe on one side and a pick on the other. Super handy tool. We had loppers that basically would help trim out some of the roots that were popping up, or branches that were in the way, etc. So loppers and hand saws. Hand saws were extremely handy in just kind of taking out some smaller trees, some stumps, etc., or roots. So, those were our major tools that we used. There's a few others that we use, but for the most part, having that as your basic tool set is it's kind of what you need for working on the tread work. So again, that's really just kind of getting in there and digging. And sometimes when it was super steep, oh man, you had to dig super deep. I posted a picture of what I call Amen Corner, and it came down to a creek side, but I had to dig so deep in order to get the grade sustainable so that it wasn't too steep to get down to that. Still a little bit steep. And then maybe at some point we build an expansive bridge, over that creek. But for the meantime, it's going to serve our purposes. We just put down some flat rocks in the creek bed that people can use to get over. And get back on trail. So the tread work was extensive. That's kind of the foundation of the trail, is getting that established. And from working on tread work, once we started to really get close to the end, we could start working on some of the other pieces, like the bridges. The bridges were amazing. The CMC, they created, Tom just made this fantastic bridge. They used two trees as the kind of the trusses, if you will, the base of the bridge, and then built everything around it. You can see that on my Instagram or Facebook. It's the bridge that has two handrails. It was incredible to watch this thing, go from two standing trees to two trees that were down. They stripped the bark, and then started to build the bridge around that. And, to see the final product was just incredible. I had one of the other fathers. He's one of the fathers of the middle school. Nate, thank you so much for creating that. In the pictures, it's the single handrail bridge that goes over another creek. It was a short expanse, but it had one of those, like, you could probably hop across, but having the bridge definitely makes it safer for the kids. So, we basically built two bridges on this trail. Again, there's potential for a third bridge down the road. They also built kind of a spillway right by the bridge that the CMC built. There was kind of a wet area, and this took a little bit more work. They laid two trees in there to kind of create a channel for the water. And then on either side, we brought a lot of rocks and just broke them up, and kind of put them on either side of the logs so that there was, a good drainage into that spillway, so that the water would just kind of trickle through all of the rock, and not create standing water on either side of the spillway, and then covered that with some dirt. So it's a really easy crossing. It makes it drier. Didn't need a bridge, but it was a good way to keep water moving, away from the trail and away from the bridge without having to create a whole nother bridge. So lots of stuff that went into this. We didn't have to create too many water bars. Now, water bars are kind of diversions. Basically, if you're running on a trail and you see kind of a little trench that's built on a descent, that's to kind of take the water off the trail. Water will take the easiest path, right? So if it's just going to go straight down the trail, what you do is you create a water bar, and that creates a berm on the downside of the hill. So a little bit of a lip, a speed bump, if you will, so that it stops the water from going down the trail and then pushes it off the trail. Now, I'm going to watch this trail over time, and if I see where water is really cutting into the trail, then we make some water bars. We kind of create some. Now, sometimes you'll see a log, and that's, the stop, or you'll see rocks, that, they've built kind of another causeway, a little drainage ditch. There's multiple ways to create water bars, but we didn't have to create too many. You can also create grade reversals. So, in other words, if you have a downhill and the water's coming down it, you make that, like, what we call grade reversal. You make it go uphill a little bit so that the water comes down, and then you make your water bar so that it drops off the side. Again, we didn't have to make too many of these because of the sustainable grade that we made this trail. Sometimes steps are needed. There is one kind of part where you come out of the creek, where I call Amen Corner, that I've thought maybe could use some steps. It is kind of, it's on the forefront of my mind, so I may create some steps for that one. But otherwise, in this one, we really didn't need too many steps. The CMCA also created what we call a parkway, which was super cool. There was a massive tree. There was a big root that kind of came across the trail that we didn't want to cut because we didn't want to harm the tree. It is a really, like I said, really big root. And I actually slipped on it because, if you're running and there's this root across the trail, my foot went sideways and I slipped on it. So what we did for that was, on the trail that's the downhill side. So in other words, where the slope heads down, they took two trees and stacked them, and they stacked them on the side of the trail so that they could build the trail up a little bit more to go over, right? So, on this, like, basically the two trees were higher than the existing trail was. And what that did was it made it higher than the route itself. And then we could take the dirt and some rocks and fill that in so that the route wasn't exposed any longer. Um, so the parkway was really cool because it saves the route and it makes it safe to run over. Then there's stone guards. Stone guards are another way of protecting the trail in high erosion areas. This is places where you can see the dirt just doesn't want to hold due to foot traffic, due to water erosion, whatever it may be. You place stones in the ground, flat stones. So just like a creek crossing, basically you place those on the trail so that it protects the trail and doesn't allow it to erode as quickly. Um, so, lots of stuff that goes into building and making these trails sustainable, and that's the huge thing is the more sustainable you build the trail, the less maintenance that you have to do over the course of time, the less that you have to be out there to keep this trail, in good working order. Then the final touches. This is just making sure that there's no limbs and kind of crossing over the trails. No real big roots that are tripping hazards. Rocks, same thing. And then adding your trail markings. So if you're going to blaze it, we put up the sign Saft's Trail. Which was a huge honor, as I said on social media. But making those final touches, just kind of making sure the trail is in good shape. We had a beehive, massive beehive that we went and I think we used about 10 cans of spray to eliminate this ground hive. And just trying to make sure that safety of the kids is at the forefront. So making sure that there's no hazards, and that's kind of the final touches on the trail. And then of course there's the maintaining, making sure that the water bars stay clean, making sure that there's no exposed roots. Weed whacking, all of that sort of stuff. Just making sure that there's nothing growing up in the trail, no new, sprouts of sapling trees. So lots of stuff to kind of, maintain. And that's the hard part. That's where the Forest Service has a hard time keeping up because there's so many trails and they require volunteers to help. So, when you see a trail in need, especially within national or state forest, and it looks like it hasn't been touched in a long time, reach out, see if you can help out, see if you can go clear, weed eat. That's clear out water bars. If you don't know how, just ask. They'll probably show you, and then you could help in the future. It's super super awesome to help. I love this process. We went out the other day and cleared out the nature trail at the high school. I just posted about that as well. Had a number of down trees in that last storm. So, we went out and cut the trees out, made the path clear again. We went with our hedgers and kind of took out any branches that were infringing upon the trail. And then there was an old trail that nobody had touched in apparently years. And it's nice. It was a nice add-on for the kids. So we went in there with the hedgers, and three of us just took the hedgers and we just cut this trail back out. The weeds were well above our heads and so dense, but the final product is awesome. It's just so rewarding, especially when others are going to use it. So it's there's a lot. And I can speak to trails that are potentially going to be decommissioned or are decommissioned. You can go to the Forest Service and ask if reestablish that trail and help maintain it. Will they consider not decommissioning it or reopening the trail? This has happened a lot. The Hellbender course, it wouldn't be what it is if we hadn't approached the Forest Service, because they were going to close Snook's Nose and Newberry. Those two trails were going to be goners. And we went to the Forest Service and approached them and said, "Hey, we have this vision for a race, and we cannot do it without these two trails, which we understand you're planning on decommissioning. If we were to work on these trails and make sure that they're clear and maintained, would you be okay if we use these trails?" And they were very amicable. They said, if you can do that, yes, absolutely. Now they said no to one of them, which recently they've reopened, and that was Mackey Mountain. We did try to go through and reopen Mackey Mountain, but at the time they were not ready for it. So it's not to say that, if they say no, that sometime further down the road, they may change their mind and say, yes, Mackey Mountain's a great example. But, understand that, they want to have trails open. They just need help in doing so. So if you can do it, and if there's a trail that you have an affinity for, that's, not in bad shape, it's more that, you just need to cut out the trees. If it's an erosion issue, obviously that will take a lot more work. But things like Snooks and Newberry, it was more just the maintenance of it, just kind of recutting it out. There were so many down trees, the Forest Service didn't have the time to go in there and reestablish the trail to cut out all of that stuff. So, we took the time and did it, and that's what reopened the trail. I can't tell you how many hours Victor and I spent out there cutting trees. But it's open now, and that's just that's what it takes is a little bit of labor, and that's what Saft's Trail was. It was a labor of love, that's for sure. I am so happy that this trail is established. I can't wait to share it with people. I hope that, and if you're listening to this, that you can come and run the Truly Tough Cross Country Classic, the 5K, because it's going to use the trail, and you can see the work that was put in. It's amazing when I think about this was just a forest, and we created this new route, and now the kids are using it. They love it. It's a challenging trail. So I hope you'll join us. If you can't, please reach out. I'd love for you to donate to the program. These kids work so hard. We put a lot into this trail. I'd love to give some money to the Carolina Mountain Club for all of their help. And thank you to all of you that have donated. That is amazing. I can't tell you how far it goes in having these kids, have just the experiences. They deserve, the experiences, and I'm happy to help make them come to fruition with your help. So thank you guys for all your donations. You can reach out to me on how to donate. Like I said, there's just so much going on over there. So please come see us. Come see the trail. After school hours, it is open to the public. So the kids practice till about 4:30. From 4:30 on, the trails are open. Come check them out. It's pretty awesome. We're going to be working on more in the future. So expect that this is not the last of it. This is just the beginning. So I hope you can come to the Truly Tough Cross Country Classic. Information will be in the show notes. Registration can be found on Ultra Sign Up. It's $25. It's pretty much a straight donation to the team. I'm taking nothing from this. I want it all to go to the team. There are no t-shirts. We're just doing awards for the overalls, as again, we're trying to put all the proceeds to the team. So you're really just helping the team. So thank you for your consideration. I really do appreciate everybody. Appreciate all the kind words and support as always. You all are amazing. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about the process that went into this. If it's something you want to talk about, or have that extra set of eyes of a project that you're working on, I love that sort of thing. People say, I don't know how you do everything you do. And sometimes it just takes a lot of sacrifice, which right now the sacrifice has kind of been my own training. I don't mind that right now. I'm having a great time doing all this work and spending these time with these kids and my friends working in the woods. So I can't say it's much of a sacrifice as I'm getting so much joy out of it. And that's why I talk about it, because I think it's a great passion. It's a great thing. It's awesome for the community. So if you have questions or want to talk through things, again, I have experience working with the Forest Service and obviously establishing trails. So, I'm here to help, here to talk through things. The Carolina Mountain Club is a fantastic resource. They have some amazing people in it. If you have other questions, I'm going to put their website in the show notes. They're also a fantastic place to donate not only your money, but your time. If you can volunteer, they're a wonderful organization that do amazing things for our area. So, with that, I want to just conclude with my personal thanks to just my athletes for they're just doing amazing things. They keep me so motivated and inspired. I love the fact that I get to coach these athletes. We have so many cool things going on this weekend. Oh my gosh, I don't know where to begin. Morgan Elliott, I wish him the best of luck. He is running the Sky Running World Championships. He's running the vertical K and the 37K. So he's running two races this weekend at the World Championships. Just phenomenal. Rachel Blinn, she begins her Tour de France on Sunday over in Italy. So, like I said, just a ton of things going on this weekend. So many runners have racing this weekend, so I'm so excited. It's a fun time in running the fall when so much pops up. Just so cool. I can't wait to see what happens. Mike Reardon, he's lining up for the Divide 200. Like I said, so many so many races this weekend. It's so cool. I wish all of them luck. I wish all of you luck. If you want to talk about coaching, please reach out. All my contact information is in the show notes. So please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to have that conversation. Usually start with you emailing me, and then I'll send you my call schedule, and we can kind of talk through things, talk about coaching, what that looks like, and see if we're a good fit. So appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all of your suggestions and feedback. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. Until next time, keep moving forward, my friends. Running is life.